we used to say is, okay, well, you got a no. That means you're much closer to a yes.
Yeah. Well, that's what I told her. Look, not a lot of comedians, comedy writers get to submit a packet to Colbert. And then last week we had a podcast where one of her friends was on, a comedian, an actress, a writer. And she goes, yeah, I submitted 40 packets, 40 times. I still haven't gotten one, which just, here my partner Zara is worried about the first one. And this young woman had submitted 40 packages, nothing. So you've been in the theater. It's a long road.
It's a long, hard road. It's a long and winding road, right?
And it's, what my mother used to say, talent is neither necessary nor sufficient.
That's so perfect. It's so true.
Yeah.
So true, right?
Some really untalented people, just, right break, right time, right place, right management.
It's so true.
But on the comedy side, on the speaker side, you can make a good living, and even if nobody knows who you are.
It's true, right?
Yeah, a friend of mine and I we were gonna try to speak at colleges, theater departments and so forth, and talk to the young people about, look, you don't have to be famous to make a good living in show business, and you can do a lot of things. You can do commercials, you can do legitimate theater, you can do voiceovers, there's a world of things. You do stand-up comedy, you can do and make good money. Nobody even really knows who you are. So
it's so true.
So you were an actress at one point, or are an
actress? I was. Yeah. I trained a little bit at Northwestern and then Syracuse University, and then landed it in New York at NYU, and worked in the experimental theater wing, ETW, and did Shakespeare and film, and then went and did some off-Broadway shows, and then realized, I don't know that I might have the talent, but I don't know that I've got the wherewithal to deal with the cruelty of the profession.
Yes.
To say it nicely.
Yeah. I started out in acting, and
okay,
and I in San Diego, and I auditioned I don't know how many community theaters, never got any parts, and I took acting classes. And my acting teacher came one night to see me do stand-up. And this is probably the nicest backhanded compliment I've ever gotten. She goes, stand-up, you do that very well. Is that a nice way of saying that I don't need to be bothered with acting classes? But you know what? When I was in high school, I did stand-up in the talent show. And in my senior year, nobody had ever done stand-up before. And the reason I did it was, again, 3 years of drama, no good parts, no speaking parts. I thought, if I write a comedy routine, if I do stand-up, I can write, direct, produce, and star in my own little show every night.
You don't have to rely on anybody to cast you.
No.
Right?
Yes, exactly. And it worked. Yeah. Now, if I were doing stand-up and I got an opportunity, somebody said, listen, we saw you last night at the Improv. We think you'd be great for this. Okay. But, going to an audition where you're there with 30 other people just like you, I just it seems soul sucking to me. I don't know if I could do that. So,
are you still doing your comedic work in?
Yes, I still do. If somebody asks, I still do stand up. I started in clubs, did that for about 10 years. Then I jumped to the rubber chicken circuit, after dinner, after lunch comedy, banquets. And then I jumped into speaking 2014. So I went from funny speaker to speaker who's funny. And I make my living speaking on suicide prevention as a comedian.
Yes.
Takes
I actually did. I know I saw some of your work, because when we first started talking to you, I pulled something up of yours, if that's YouTube or something. Do you have?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, lots of comedy and four TEDx talks so far. I just pitched another one last night.
Really?
Yep.
Well, I'd love to hear more about that experience for you.
Yeah, it's well, the fifth one was just a nightmare. It was their first time. They were micromanaging me. I'm like, look, I've done this 4 times. You're trying to teach Michael Jordan how to make a jump shot. Trust me on this. I did it. I got a standing ovation, first one ever. And then Big Ted, for some reason, because they have to sign off on all the talks, they said it's not going up and would not tell me why. Was it some scientific fact that I quoted that I couldn't support, or was it something I offended somebody, in the talk, or we can't fix it unless you tell me what,
And they wouldn't give you any information?
No. So the one I pitched last night was the same one because it's too good not to do. It's called Mental Health and the Orgasm, Treat Your Depression Single-Handedly. And it's all about the palliative effects of orgasm on the body and the mind. And I had a ball doing it. Well, the audience was like part comedy show, part science, and the audience, like I said, I got my first standing ovation. I've done 4 before. Nobody ever stood, but this time and it broke my heart because it was just that much fun. But I'm pitching the same one again, hoping that whoever is curating them at the Big TED, it won't be the same person and they won't, notice it. I'm trying to do it again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well, just keep, as you know, right? We just
Yeah.
keep trying and keep putting it out there so that somebody sees it and is awakened by it, right?
That's what I tell my TEDx coaching clients. Look, sometimes it takes half dozen more times submissions to different events before somebody's going to think it's the best thing they've ever seen.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I have a friend who submitted 80 times, 80 TEDx all over the country.
80.
She hired a
And?
company. She hired a company for $4,800 to help her get a TEDx, and they helped her put the application together. And most of the applications are roughly the same, so you just kind of cut and paste. And it's a good idea. I knew that because we were friends. And I said, Amy, let me see your package. What you pitching? I said, it's a good idea. There's every I is dotted, every T is crossed, but it just doesn't sing. It's not sticky. So let's work it over and see if we can't. So we worked it over, and within 5 submissions, she just got TEDx Boston. So yeah, it's that's I think that's the key. You got to get people excited about whatever the idea is. So they have to read
Absolutely.
on.
Well, at some point, I'd love to have a conversation with you about that because I'd love to get on a TEDx stage for sure.
Do you have an idea worth spreading, Edie?
Oh, don't we all?
Yes, but most people have 1 or 2 that they're really passionate about.
So my book is about grief and learning how to, that there's self-discovery in grief, and that's a very different take on the journey of grief. That
post-traumatic growth idea where
I'm sorry?
is it sort of a post-traumatic growth idea?
Well, yes, but I don't use that terminology at all. It's actually the idea that you need to learn about yourself as you're grieving, and you will learn. It's not even that you need to, but as part of the grief process, you learn about yourself, and what you learn will also help you cope.
What's the name of the book?
It's Grief, the Dance of Self-Discovery Through Trauma and Loss.
So the title is that title and subtitle?
It's title. So the title itself is It's Grief. And the sub is The Dance of Self-Discovery Through Trauma and Loss.
That's a good TEDx talk title. Because what I do with my clients is I go, look, the title has got to be a little, not mysterious, but it has to raise a question in the mind of the person who's reading it, like it's grief. Okay, what does that mean? To force them to read on to the subtitle that explains it, which yours does.
Yeah.
And then what you do, they ask right below that, okay, give us a 250-word description, kind of flesh out the idea for us.
Mm-hmm.
And then below that, there's a paragraph they generally ask you for where you tell them why you are the person to be delivering this talk.
Mm-hmm.
And then generally, not until the audition where you get called back, then they do like 5 minutes Q&A and ask you, okay, what are the takeaways? What are the action items? I've had several people come to me and go, I got that far, Frank. They asked me for takeaways. And I'm like, what's the takeaway? So you have to be prepared, with your
takeaways.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. What they're going to learn, what action items, what can they do after they've heard your TEDx they couldn't do before they heard it.
Mm-hmm.
That's basically the application. And then occasionally they'll want to see a little video of you on stage doing pretty much anything just to see that you can walk and talk and carry a microphone.
Well, that I got.
Yeah, I figured you did. Yeah. And sometimes the audition, the callback is, okay, send us a 2 to 3 minute video, you staring into the camera, again, giving us an overview of your idea. And then if you get selected, they're going to want 12 to 18 minutes of that. And that I also help the clients with that 12 to 18 to make sure it sings. I've got a gentleman I'm working with now. He sent me he did a Zoom version because he booked a TED Talk, booked 2 of them actually, and he had to turn one down. And he sent me a Zoom version of his talk. I said, you need to perform this somewhere before you do it on stage at TED, so we can.
Of course.
Yeah. And he was a monk for 20 years. Then he became a money manager. And I'm listening to his Zoom, and I'm thinking, man, I'm waiting for you to break into a chant. That's your monk voice and energy. We need to kick it up a notch. He was very measured, very controlled. Yeah, it's almost, if I said it's bloodless, I mean, I could deliver the talk. If I could memorize it, I could deliver it and do it better, actually. Because it's just, like I said, it's almost like a monk chant. Anyway, that's the process for me and for my clients is I want to make sure that when they do the presentation that there's, it's an idea you want to share. I mean, you need to make it feel like you can't wait to tell them. You're
Right.
so excited about it.
Yeah, and there needs to be contrast, right, in what you say and how you say it.
Yes, because it can't be all one note.
No, can't be all one note. Not at all. Not at all.
Ebb and flow, and and move them emotionally somehow or other, and
yeah.
Yes, that's how I coach it. But anyway, I would say the idea you have is excellent. And
thank you.
If you'd like me to, I can send you a couple of. There are a couple of windows open, application windows open for several. In early 2021, January 2021, if you want to take a shot at filling them out, and then we can circle back, share a screen, and you can go, what in the world are they asking here?
That would, I'd love to. Yeah, that sounds good. Sounds like a good idea.
Okay, I've got one that is in London, actually. Something on the Thames, King something on the Thames, and it's due, I'm afraid there's a short fuse, it's due no later than August 3rd. So I can send it to you today if you want to look it over and, if you feel like you can fill it out. And
all right.
Do your best.
Yeah, send it over. I mean, it only took me 10 years to write my book, so.
Okay, you got 2 days.
I thought that'd get you to laugh, we have a joke. We have a joke in my family that the couch. So when I wrote on the couch, and sometimes I would stay there for 12 hours at a time, and I would just sit there, and that was it. With the help of a little ADD medication, and I was fine, But after 2 years of sitting on that couch and finally finishing the book, the couch literally had an indentation. We had to get a new couch.
There was a body here.
Yes, there was a body here.
Well, let me have your email because I've got the application up right here.
So it's EDY1 Nathan @gmail.com.
Nathan81 Nathan at gmail.com.
That's it.
Oh yeah, there you are. Okay, and it's coming at you.
Cool.
And the theater looks
Amazing.
yeah, it's it's tiered. It's got the it's obviously a legitimate theater. It looks like it holds 600 or 700 people.
Wow.
When
I
you get
doubt that they're going to be doing anything in person, though.
well, January,
Eh.
what they all do at this point that I've bumped into is they go, look, we're planning in person, but we of course may have to fall back to virtual.
Okay.
So they'll arrange a venue and just hope for the best and that they can do it live. And, and worst case, they just postpone.
Right.
One of my clients was supposed to do it this month in Wisconsin, and he just got the note they're going to postpone it for a year because they figure, you know what, a year from now, we should be able to do it live. So,
Yep.
anyway,
Yeah.
I think it's, I do believe, 50 talks. January 11th, let's see. Like in January, I think this is, let me make sure I apply to speak. It's TEDx Kingston, January 3rd at the Rose Theater in Kingston. The theme, and a number of them have themes, some don't. The theme is Life Finds a Way.
Huh. That's like a perfect fit.
And applications close on Sunday night, August 2nd.
Oh, that's tomorrow.
Yeah, and I wonder if that's, because this is in England, I wonder what time zone that's in. Yeah, let's see. You might want to fill it out today and send, and we can circle back later on today if you can.
Let me see what I can do.
Yeah, they would ask name, email, title, brief overview, 150 words max. What makes you uniquely placed to deliver this talk? 150 words max. Video link, website link, social media link. Boom. Oh yeah, you should be able to nail this. It's a very simple form. I would do it this afternoon if I were you, if you're game.
If I can. Yeah, it's a busy afternoon, so if not, I'll see what I can put together.
If not, I've got several others that are about the same time frame.
Okay.
So, and I'd be happy to work the application. And once you fill out an app, I would cut and paste whatever you write into a Word doc because, like I said, the questions repeat.
Okay, got it.
Yep. Anyway.
Super. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
How'd you get the TED Talk? Well, I'm doing this Zoom podcast, and stranger things have happened.
Stranger things, absolutely.
So tell us. I know you've written the book. Now I know it took you 10 years to do it, and you ruined a couch in the process. So, what was the genesis of the book?
Sometimes there's not one thing that is part of the genesis of anything, right?
Oh yeah, maybe there's a cataclysmic, a death in the family.
It was a series of traumas. One was the loss of my partner when I was in my early 20s, and before that, having been severely bullied and having been sexually abused. So I've got 3 really major incidents that occurred in my life before I hit 30 that changed the trajectory of my life, changed my perspective on what comes next and how I want to be in the world. Yeah.
So you sat down and thought, I need to write a book?
Well, I actually sat down and said, I'm going to write my thesis. And from that thesis on grief and loss, I started to peel back the layers of that thesis and began to rewrite something that ended up being this book. And what started as a conversation around just grief and loss from the loss of a loved one, death, dying, and that framework of grief, it expanded, and that conversation expanded to include the losses in our lives, to include what I call the big G's and the little G's. The big G's are, loss of a loved one, loss of a job, loss of a home, loss of a limb, illness. Those are big G's. And then the little G's, which when they accumulate and they're not dealt with can become a big G. So when you say no to yourself over and over and over again, it can become a big G. When you get shut down time and time again, it can start out as a little G, it turns into a big G. And that big G becomes a grief that is loud, unrelenting, and needs to be paid attention to. And so I wrote the book to really include everyone, from people who lost partners, yes, lost loved ones, lost children, and lost their senses of self, their souls, their homes, the literal home and the figurative symbolic home.
And here in the U.S., that's about to happen again en masse.
En masse.
En masse, yes, the foreclosure and eviction moratorium expired yesterday, as did the 600 a week in federal unemployment. So I have a feeling we're going to have a lot of people losing their homes, literally and figuratively.
Yeah.
In the next few months.
Well, when you have there's been a great displacement. The pandemic has displaced us in so many different ways, not knowing what we're doing, not knowing what comes next, not knowing if there is a next. We're afraid, and we're also energized. We're in a moment of perhaps creation, and sometimes it is the very pain that changes us. It's a pain that also helps us to reflect and change everything about the way that we live, or the way that we communicate, or the way that we interact with our partner. Or should we stay with our partner? Should we leave our partners? Do we need to have a different job? Maybe a realization, I don't really like what I'm doing. I need to do something else. I don't want somebody to be in control of whether or not I'm working. I'm actually going to go into creation mode. And so there can be, with every loss, with every death, there's birth. And so we're in a cycle right now. And these cycles, as hard as they are, they can also be illuminating.
Yeah, I've told some of I guess all my speaking clients, most of them have a real job, day job, whatever. And I said, look, you're home, working at home, so there's nobody looking over your shoulder. I want you to do your job. I don't want you to get fired. But, it's a good opportunity, at breaks and things, you can plan your own time. Now, you want to be a speaker, you want to make it full time at some point. Now is the time, or if they're furloughed, they've got a contracting gig where they're drawing unemployment. Now's the time to, let's use the government money to launch that dream, basically. So
totally. Yeah. So we are in what the Buddhists we're in a liminal time. It's a Buddhist thought. The liminal time is liminal space and time. We're at a threshold. We don't know what's coming next. And being in that liminal space is like being in the unknown and not knowing, and really having to find some place within ourselves to be okay with not knowing the next.
Yeah, one of my favorite things, I traveled the world on cruise ships doing comedy before the pandemic. And I would fly into an airport someplace, Singapore, in the middle of the night. Never been there before. I don't speak Singaporese or Chinese or whatever they speak. But I realized that when I flew in there, I would never fly in there for the first time again. So, I would never see it with new eyes, fresh eyes again. So it became an adventure because it's someplace I'd never been that I had to navigate. And I got there, and the port agent wasn't there to take me to the ship, which they should have been supposed to be. So I had to find someone. And international travelers tend to take care of one another. So I just stood there like little orphan Andy looking. And sure enough, somebody walked up, spoke English. They helped me go to the money exchange and exchange for the local currency. They took me to a payphone. They loaded it in. They took my phone from me with the number for the port agent on there. They dialed it in, and then that's how I got to the hotel that night. So it's that is it horrible, or is it just a really interesting adventure? Because it'll never happen again that way. So I just tried to maintain that mindset that you're seeing this for the first time, only one time. Every other time you fly in here, it'll be more familiar. So
it's so true.
Yeah, it's a little daunting, but it's yeah. So and I've slept on many an airport floor. I had a sleep test where they wire you up, watch you all night. A friend of mine said, I could never sleep with somebody watching me. I go, look, I travel internationally. I can not only sleep with people watching me, I can sleep with people stepping over me.
So are you able to sleep when they're not stepping over you? That becomes the question.
That's a good point. And really, I felt like I got paid to travel. I was just a professional traveler who spoke. I told the audience, I get the ship, look, you're not paying me for the jokes. You paid me to get here. You come to my house, no charge. So anyway, so you finally finished the book at the 10-year mark. Am I correct?
Yeah, I finally finished the book at the 10-year mark. Yeah.
And self-published? Publisher?
I did. I self-published, which was also a journey in and of itself.
Yes, Lord.
Right? And that thankfully did not take 10 years to self-publish it once it was done.
I'm sorry. I don't mean to laugh, but that is, yeah.
Oh no! From one author to another, that self-publishing route is daunting for sure, and trying to find what the truth is and what the best way is, and that all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed, and you need to kind of be very, very specific in what you're doing, and make sure that that you got all your ducks in a row.
Yeah, two other authors and I, writing a series of books on men's mental health, because there are very few, and 8 out of 10 people who die of suicide in the U.S. are men. And so it's an anthology, 12 authors 12 contributors per book, sort of chicken soup for the tortured man's soul. And the first one we self-published on Amazon through whatever that platform is, and didn't have a publicist. And, it hasn't gone very far. Book number 2, we all decided we need somebody who knows what they're doing about, publicity and so forth. So we've hired somebody to help with the launch. But yeah, it's you always think that writing the book's going to be the hard part. No, self-publishing may be the hard part.
Yeah.
Did you do an audiobook version?
I haven't yet done an audiobook version. I'm in the process of actually finishing a workbook that goes with the book. And once that's done, I'll then, create the audio version of the book. Because the book has a lot of exercises, I certainly don't want people driving and trying to do the exercises. I just don't think that's such a good idea. So trying to figure out the best way to offer the exercises on an audiobook, but to really be very clear that, this is not something I want you to be necessarily thinking about. Please do not close your eyes while you're driving and meditate. That is not what I would suggest here.
No, ours is a manual as well. A lot of resources, exercises, techniques and stuff. And I'm voicing them for Audible. And so I talk about the exercises, but it's not the kind of thing you do, like say, while you're driving. You do them when you have a hard copy of the book or a copy of the ebook, and you can do the exercises.
Absolutely. Yeah. And these are all exercises that when I do workshops, they get incorporated into the workshop, and they are then, really further illuminated through psychodrama, storytelling, narrative that is beautiful in workshop form, whether
Mm.
it's, in person or now through Zoom. And it's just lovely to see how people take something from the page and put it into action. And from that action, the embodiment of an emotion or the acting out of, or an embodiment of someone who they really had a hard time with, who they've been very angry with, who's now since died, and they have an ability through this work to converse with them and almost hear a response, or
Mm.
maybe even embody the response. Through that, there is healing, and it's a wonderful dance to see and unfold.
Do you keynote as well as train and workshop?
So yeah, I do keynote. I actually had, if you talk about cruises, I was a keynoter on death cruises. We call them
I'm
the
sorry?
death cruises. So people, survivors, people who had lost partners, who had
Yeah.
lost friends, and it was for 10 years, did a week-long cruise. I did the keynoting and led workshops. And then we had spiritual people. We had people who really worked through one-on-one sessions, like a therapeutic intervention with some people. And we did this for 10 years. The last cruise we did, it was a much smaller. Usually we had about 100 to 150 people
Mm.
on these cruises. This last one, we only had about 20 people, and it was unbelievable. One woman brought, and we didn't know this, she brought the ashes of her daughter. And at
Whoa.
the end of the week, she had shifted her pain into growth. And she was then able to let go of those ashes.
Wow.
And she chose to put them, to let them go, to let them fly.
Which cruise line?
I don't remember, and I don't remember,
Okay.
because we were on so many different cruise lines.
Yeah, as was I.
So
Uh,
I could certainly follow back, get back to you on that one.
oh no, that's okay. I just curious. Um, so, do you charge? You get paid to keynote? I mean, not cruises aside.
So yes, and the keynoting has been something that I'm really switching into more now than
Yeah.
ever. And that switch was moving away from my private practice and more into keynoting and workshopping. Unfortunately, this pandemic hit. So some of that keynoting is on the side right now. It's just, but the keynotes are definitely there and ready to go. I talk a lot about grief, the dance of grief, how you partner with it, and burnout, and how burnout and grief are, partners, and how much they partner with one another.
Yeah, that's the way I manage my depression generally is I used to say I battle my depression. Then I realized that battle implies I can win.
Mhm.
Because it's, for me, it's genetic, it runs in the family. Um, I take what is a martial art called Aikido.
Oh, Aikido, sure.
Yeah, and it's not a hard style. Rather than, oppose your opponent, you blend with the opponent, or they call it partner, actually. You blend with your partner's energy, and you both end up moving in the same direction. And so that's the approach I try to take with the depression is that I partner with the depression. And rather than push back against it, I blend as it goes by and we move forward together. And it takes some practice, but it helps.
You know, what you're talking about is exactly how I look at grief and how you dance with it. That the more you push it and you push it away, the stronger it becomes.
Yep.
It's like any good anxiety. But if you say, okay, come on, come closer.
Yeah.
Let me see you. Let me see what you look like. Let me understand how you want to come into my life. What do you want me to see? What do you want me to learn? Teach me. And by through that invitation, you're actually, you're giving yourself power in a format, in a feeling that so often feels powerless.
Yeah. Agreed. Because it has a great energy, as I tell
Yes.
people. So I blend with that energy. And
Yes.
in Aikido, you take the your partner in a circle, and you at some point you actually take their balance. And in most techniques, you lower them to the ground because you've taken away their balance. You got them off balance, which, yeah, again, it's a matter of blending with their energy and using that energy with them. So,
Mm-hmm.
and the
And their
larger,
energy enhances your own.
yeah, and the larger the opponent, the more energy there is to co-opt, as it were. Uh, yeah, so it just seems to, rather than trying to push up against it or push back against it, push
Yeah.
through.
Takes a lot more energy to push against than it does to partner.
Yeah, to resist.
Yeah.
So it is a suicide prevention punchline podcast talking about all things, mental health and suicide prevention. You mentioned earlier on you had a little anxiety, you were anxious. Do you have a particular diagnosis, something that runs in your family? What's the
Anxiety does run in my family for sure. I it goes way back, and there's a legacy of women and men who have done a very good job holding their anxiety. So, and I was actually taken into the layer of phobic behavior, and I became so agoraphobic in my early 20s that I couldn't even leave my home.
hmm.
And there I was in a one-bedroom apartment living alone on Flatbush Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. And it was really hard. And it was really through some very dear friends who came and helped me get the help I needed, which people who have anxiety, high anxiety, the last thing they want is help because there's a lot of shame around the anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
And that shame just makes it worse. The more you try to hide the anxiety, just like what we were talking about, the bigger it becomes. And it just grows and it grows and it grows. And it's like this big monster in the room. And it's like, no, I don't want this monster in the room. And it's like, no, go away, go away. And the monster says, nope, I'm not going away. You got to look at me. And it's like, no, 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 I don't want the monster. Go away, go away. And the monster's saying, no, no, no. This is not the way you're going to make me disappear. The only way to get me to disappear is to see me, to dance with me, and to realize that the other side of that anxiety is anger. And if you don't deal with that anger, whatever's been angering you, then I'm going to keep hanging around.
Yeah, couch surfing here. While you, so do you have a particular self-care plan nowadays?
So it took a good couple of years, I'd say probably same 10 years that it took me to write the book. Well, it was a different set of 10 years to really move through the anxiety. Find ways to say yes to yourself. Find ways to dream. Get the sleep you need, because when you're in an anxious state, it's very hard to sleep. It's very hard to find those moments of self-care and those moments of meaning. And if you can find those moments of meaning, even if it means I'm going to reach out to you, Frank, and I'm going to say, hey, I'm having a hard day. Could you listen? Could you lend an ear? Could you just put your hand out and hold my hand and not be afraid of being told no or being rejected? Because if you say no, it's not about me. It's you setting boundaries for yourself, and that's okay. It's not about me. So it's finding the people that can be the holders and be the witnesses, and know that one day you'll be a witness too for someone who comes along the way. Part of the coping is being true to yourself, being honest, and having the integrity to be honest with yourself and with others around you. So those are some major coping mechanisms that I use. And one of the coping mechanisms that I also talk about in the book is really identifying, like, who am I? Am I a fixed personality? Am I mutable, or am I cardinal? Fixed, when you come upon a boulder, you say, I'm going to get through this boulder. I don't need any help. And I'm just going to keep plugging away. The mutable is going to find as many people as they can to help them get over that boulder. The cardinal is going to say, I got this. Don't worry. You want to come and watch? So knowing who you are can actually help you figure out maybe who you need to call on, because maybe someone who's mutable needs some of that fixed energy, and maybe someone who's fixed needs some of that cardinal energy. And to realize who we are in the fight. If the boulder is the anxiety, what do you need? Who are the people who to back you, and who are you in the process? Because who you are can affect how you get out of it.
I'm guessing that's in the book.
Yes, sir.
Shot in the dark.
Yep.
So what's your next project? I know you're going to put the manual together so people aren't driving and meditating.
Yes, that's true.
After the manual, what's your next project?
You know how you've got, and I though I don't know you, I feel like I know you. You got like lots of stories and books going on in your brain. So, right?
Yeah.
And they just keep coming. One of the things that is going on around us right now is there's a lot of pressure around trauma. People are feeling this post-trauma, and will probably continue to feel the effects of trauma, of meeting an enemy that we cannot see, that we don't understand, and that where there are no rules.
Yep.
And so many of the frontline workers may not even know what they're going to be dealing with 6 months from now or a year from now. So I'm working on a short book called Post-Trauma: Response, Repair, and Resources.
Oh, nice.
And it'll be a quick go-to. So what's your response to what's going on? And there'll be a list of things and really definitions about those different elements. What are some of the repairs that can be done? It's not a cure-all, but sometimes a repair is just enough to help you just get over the hump, get to the next place. And then resources. What are the resources?
Well, Edie, I think that's your second TEDx.
No, really? You think?
I think.
Huh.
Yeah. I'm pitching the one that got panned by TED. I'm pitching another one called Depressive Realism. Maybe the glass really is half empty. Because there's some science research that shows people who live with depression see the world more accurately than neurotypicals who may be wearing the rose-tinted glasses. And the third one is, the third one has to do with my comedy career and the coronavirus. But it sounds like to me that sounds like a follow-up TEDx to the first one.
Yeah.
In my mind,
Yeah, I don't think in terms of TEDx. I just think in terms of people and need, and it's like we all carry the magic within us, and then sometimes the magic it dims, and the light within us dims because of circumstances that we have no control over. And when the light is on and when the magic is alive, there's nothing like this world. When the magic dims and the light dims, you feel it. And people are sensitive, and people feel other people. And there's so much intensity that's going on right now. And it can be an interrupter to intimacy, to love, to care, to us as crucial human beings.
Yeah, I do believe that's number two. And the nice thing about a TEDx is, it goes up on YouTube in theory, and people all over the world. I've had a guy from Switzerland wrote me, emailed me, said I've been depressed. I can't remember the last time I was happy. I'm 40. I have a lovely wife, a darling 8-year-old daughter, good job. And I stumbled on your TEDx talk where you came out as depressed and suicidal. And he said, for the first time in my life, I realized that I'm not alone. That's and I had a young woman that I connected with on Twitter. She wrote me a DM. She goes, I can't believe it's you. Why not? She goes, I watched your TEDx last fall when I was going through a really rough time. I was near suicide. And, it became a lifeline for me. And I decided I'm taking 10 weeks off. I'm taking, a hiatus from my job for 10 weeks. Best thing she said I ever did. And it all goes back to watching that TEDx that you had on YouTube. And so that's the power of the internet and YouTube and, spreading your message. There's no money in the YouTube. You're not going to get a booking out of it. Chances are you get a little credibility, those big red letters, but the impact you can have on the human race, as people either go there on purpose or stumble on it. It just,
It's so true, Frank. And we're all connected by a thread. And whether it's a golden thread, whatever the color thread that is, but we are all connected by a thread. And that thread, when it's interrupted, causes an internal interruption within us. And right now we have a thread, and this thread is the pandemic, and it keeps on shifting and turning, not unlike, the HIV virus. When it came in, it kept switching. Like they'd give it one drug and then it would become resistant to that drug, and then you'd give it something else and it would become resistant to that. And it took many very smart people to put together a cocktail that would eventually fight that virus. And in a way, then there was a threat again. It was like, okay, so people are not dying the way they were dying in the 80s from AIDS, from HIV, HIV converting into AIDS.
Mm-hmm.
And it takes the world, it takes a community, it takes people believing that change can happen. And we're in that place again. So,
yeah, I have a keynote I created called Social Distancing and Staying Sane. Don't worry about your mentally ill friends. Because people kept saying to me, are you worried about people with mental illness? No, because if they've made it this far, living with mental illness, chances are they're in therapy and medication, probably got a self-care plan. I said, I wake up in an uncertain world every day, whether there's a pandemic or not. And I've got to figure a way to get out of bed and get my feet on the floor and get moving through the world. And I have techniques and things I do to make that happen on the best and the worst days. And so I've been doing webinars and podcasts and explain to neurotypical people, okay, here's how you do this. Got to have a schedule. Go to bed same time. Get up same time. Schedule your meals, meditation, your exercise. Avoid too much media. It's things I've been doing for decades that sort of position me, to survive this, because yes, it's uncertain, but hey, welcome to my world.
everything that you just mentioned is like a ritual, okay? Yeah. And it's really keeping the rituals up. Don't let them go. If you get up at 7, just keep getting up at 7, even if at this point maybe you're not working, or maybe the way that your job is, things are different, time is different, but keeping up those rituals, that's so very important. And making new ones, creating new ones, making sure that you reach out. One of the things I say is you got to reach out to 3 people and tell them 3 things: something you smiled about today, something you learned, and something that made you laugh, or something that warmed your heart, or something you created, and to know that you've got the power. The Wizard of Oz is one of my favorite parables, and she was at the beginning, she was, given these red shoes. She had no idea what those shoes, the power those shoes held, but and even if she knew, she might not have been able to use the power within those shoes. She had to go through her tasks. She had to go through all the different paths and journeys and witches in order to finally come home to herself and realize that she had the power in her feet and in those shoes all along, to fly, to come home, to find herself, to learn to dance with anxiety or anger or fear or the unjust.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite movies, and there are things in there that the jokes write themselves. I said, she's in Oz. She's a celebrity. She's being pampered. She realizes she's had the power all along. She has one wish, and it's to go back to a dirt farm in Kansas in black and white. I mean, most people, most women especially, if you got free jewelry and footwear, you couldn't drag her out of there with a horse of a different color. So it's, but yeah, and in my story about, mental health and the orgasm, I mentioned Dorothy. You've always had the power.
Yeah, you've always had the power.
Yeah,
That's
to,
right.
to get these
That's
palliative effects.
right.
Yeah. So so that's, I've been doing quite a bit of that, teaching neuronormal people how to have a schedule and gamification. How you make a game of it to get yourself out of bed, get to the store.
Let me also just say, you were talking about, mental health, and, if they made it this long, then they're okay. Unfortunately, in the world of opioids, people are
Oh
not
Lord.
doing okay. They're not doing okay at all right now. Too many clinics have closed. They haven't had access to their normal groups, to seeing people, to having to be accountable. And it's so sad that this population of people, it's genderless, it's ageless, it affects so many, and for those folks who feel so stuck and scared and feel like it's just a fight that they can't fight, please reach out for help. Please don't do this alone. Please know that the pain of this, I don't understand it, but I've seen it and I've witnessed it. And you can do this. You can make it through. Just call the people who used to be your support people. Go for walks if you can, exercise if you can, wash your hands, take showers. Try to be creative with your hands. Try to write stories. Let people know what your narrative is. Continue with your rituals, and just keep thinking, I can change my brain, because this is really it. The brain in addiction is a fractured brain, and just keep saying to yourself, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, and get people around you who will support you in doing this and coming out alive.
Yeah, and in my end of the business, we separate the straight up suicides. Like last year, 47,000, not including the 65,000 opioid deaths, many of which we have no idea. Was it an accidental overdose? Was it an all-purpose overdose? Was it somehow related to self-medication? Was it just an addiction? A substance use disorder? So yeah, I mean, and in my end of the business, several studies I've read, they're expecting tens of thousands of more deaths of despair. Whether it's because of opioid or other substance use disorders, or, loss of a job, eviction, foreclosure, domestic abuse, child abuse. So yeah, it's
yeah, all the things that have been hidden, or people within families have been able to escape from because they had a job to go to. So they had 8 hours or 16 hours of a respite, and then they come back home and they know that they're dealing with their alcoholic partner or their abusive partner. But to live with that abusive partner or that alcoholic partner hour after hour, day after day, the children are not getting checked on at school the way that they were checked on. Like the teachers, the principals could really make sure that the kids were safe and did not have bruises or marks on them. And now there's this hidden culture that has been created as a result of the pandemic, as a result of us quarantining. And so, to your point, there may be things that have now really been gone into the depths, into the darkness, will be revealed, and what will be revealed may be shocking for many. And as healthcare workers, as frontline workers, as people who work with mental health, we all need to be prepared to hold, to help, to honor, to give tools, and to find ways for people to be safe.
Yeah, well, try and do that every day.
Yes.
Even at a distance. Yeah, there's a scene in James Caan, Kathy Bates, Stephen King novel. She has a thing for the author, played by James Caan, and she causes an automobile accident, or comes upon an automobile accident. He's been in it. She takes him home and nurses him, but she essentially kidnaps him, and she withholds the pain medication because he's broken his legs. And the image that Stephen King created for the pain was that the medication is like the tide coming in and covering all the sharp and raw things sticking up out of the sand. And then as the medication wears off, the tide recedes, and all these things that you didn't realize were there, all these horrible obstacles that can do great harm, are uncovered as the tide goes out. They were always there, but the water, the tide, when it came in, covered them and you didn't realize. And with the pandemic, the tide's gone out and left all this exposed.
That's right. Left it all exposed. That's such a great analogy. Again, for the people who are addicted to, the opioids, they're not able to get the medications that they've been able to get to help ease that pain, the pain of withdrawal, or the pain of really not being on a drug that we could get into a whole political conversation, but that shouldn't have been given, in the first place. So now the ability to get these meds, and I'm not going to mention any names of these medications, but to be able to get these medications so that they can begin to imagine a life that is more in line with the life they were living prior to their addiction. And we as a culture, as a society, need to figure out how can we get these medical reliefs to these people who need them the most. Because yes, we've got people who've been taken down because of the pandemic, but we've got another pandemic, and it's called an opioid pandemic. In a way, it's worldwide. So they need as much help and attention, and they right now are being forgotten,
marginalized, and more so before the pandemic.
Yes.
And I've got a new acquaintance who is one of his best friends who was addicted, got hold of some ostensibly prescription medication. And as is often the case, it was laced with fentanyl. And one tablet, and it killed. Yeah. And arguably, if we were not in the middle of a pandemic and he was being treated and prescribed, properly, and didn't have to scrounge and find another source, he'd probably still be alive. So you're absolutely right.
And how often is it coming off of all of our lips if only, and he or she would be alive.
Yeah.
If only. Fill in the blanks.
Yeah. Yeah. If only
He
we
or she would be alive. If only I had paid attention. If only I could have gotten them help. If only the pandemic had not occurred. If only. And how we can do something about some of those if onlys.
Oh yeah.
But we have to be awake, right? We need to be awake. We need to be willing to go out of our comfort zones to help, to
Yeah.
be aware.
That's pretty much when I keynote and teach signs and symptoms of depression, thoughts of suicide. Because people say, if I had only known that he was struggling,
Yeah.
if he'd only given a hint, well, chances are he or she probably did give a hint or two, because most people do leading up in the last week. So I teach them that. And I say, look, if you spot this, it's not going to be a comfortable conversation. You need to brace yourself and pick a time and place where, it's quiet and it's private and, where you can express your concern. But don't think it's going to be easy to broach this subject. But at least you'll know what to look for, and I'll tell you what to say, what not to say.
Right.
In that case.
What to say, what not to say. Would you rather live with yourself having had a hard conversation or live with yourself having known you didn't?
Yeah, somebody I know said a friend was sort of pouring out their heart. They were living with depression, thoughts of suicide. And he was doing what I recommend, just listen, actively listen. And then after an hour or so, maybe two, the person said, listen, I'm sorry to burden you with this for a couple of hours. And my friend said, look, here's the deal. I'd rather sit here with you for 2 or 3 hours and listen to what you have to say than to sit through 20 minutes of your eulogy. Oh, all right. So as Brene Brown says, which I firmly believe, I'm so comfortable in my dark, I can sit comfortably with you in yours and have you share.
So true.
Well, Edie, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, I didn't even know when we were in it.
Yeah, that's,
That must be your thing. So
well, we've been recording since moment one. This
who knew?
Yeah, well, I love conversation. I know my story. I love to hear other people's.
So, well, thank you.
Yeah.
There's, I often like to leave listeners with a thought, which is to move from grief to gratitude to gearing up to a fight for a life worth living.
Hey, nicely done. And by the way, I think there are little G's and there are big G's. Would be a great TEDx title. Because again,
that's in the book too, by the way.
Yeah, oh yeah. You said it somewhere in the middle there. You said that, and I thought,
Yep.
Now that, because it's intriguing. What does that mean?
The big G's and the little G's.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it would force them to read on to find out what the big G's and the little G's are. We get them that far, we got them hooked.
Yep.
So, anyway, be happy to help you with that.
Thank you. I will look over what you sent me. So for the England TED Talk, and see if I can even cobble something together. And if not, then then there'll be some other ones, I'm sure.
There will be other ones, but at least
Right.
you have an idea of what they're asking, and most
Yes.
applications look just like that.
And thank you so much for forwarding it to me.
Oh yeah, hey, it's what we do.
Yeah. It was easy, and thank you for the opportunity.
Oh yeah.
So how does it work? What's your next step in terms of what we recorded?
This will go to the editor, and he'll put the front end, the intro and the outro on there with music and whatever. And then when we post it, I'll send you a link saying, hey, we posted the podcast, so that you can share it on your social media.
I will share it everywhere. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, for sure.
And I don't do any editing. I mean, we just put the front end on, the back end on. So it's sort of like if it were cinema verite, it's just like conversation starts.
Okay. Cool.
All right. Well,
Thank
Edith,
you.
been
Thank you
my
so
pleasure.
much.
Thanks for coming to my fake living room.
Yeah, I love your fake living
Yeah,
room.
mid-century modern. I wish my living room looked like that.
Well, I'm sure one day it will if you want it to.
Yeah. Well, we have 3 dogs and 10 cats, so that would be a disastrous living room.
So, all
All
right.
righty. Stay.
Thank you.
I'll let you know.
Okay. Ciao.
See you.